Welcome to this first video in a series of 6 on how to create and use a custom cross-channel data-driven attribution model in DoubleClick Search. So you have decided you want to explore using data-driven attribution. DSDDA uses shapely values to determine conversion credit for each click in the path. Because DSDDA models are often used to optimize long-tail keywords, we need the marketeer's input to tell us what groups of keywords to fall back on in case we do not have enough data to accurately determine the role of a single keyword. That input is called labels. Through the use of labels, you can customize the DDA model to fit your marketing goals and activity. First of all, we advise clients to use 3 to 5 labels per DDA model. That is best practice. Whatever the number of labels you use, they should cover 100% of your search activity. Similar keywords or similar search activities should be grouped together, and ideally, none of the labels take the lion's share of your clicks, budget or conversions. If this is the case, think about the best way to split a specific label into 2 or 3. These are soft guidelines and might not be logical depending on your keyword mix, but perhaps you could try to have none of your labels cover more than 50% or less than 5% of your search activity. Also, as a rule of thumb, you can ask yourself this question: what keywords do you not mind influencing each other's evaluation? And remember, you have 5 different models you can create, so there is room for a few different label structures. Here are some examples to give you some inspiration on how to create different label structures for your different DDA models. The business Standard Inc. might just create a simple model, where one label would cover just brand keywords, one label for generic keywords, and one label for a combination of both, and include the main floodlight tags which best represent your KPI. We would advise every business out there to create one DDA model according to this methodology. This model might not be the best one to bid to a specific campaign or a group of campaigns. Let's use the second business, Technology Inc., to explain that. Let's suppose this business sells all sorts of hardware and software to both business clients and end users. Would that same logic make sense? You might consider creating a model for consumer sales and one for business sales, and those label structures might look different. You might want to split out PLAs in brand and generic for the consumer models, but not for the business ones. Similarly, Retail Inc. might want to create a model that include a floodlight that related to offline sales and one for online sales. Would you need a label for location-based keywords for a pure online model? Or think about this use case where 40% of a retail group's revenue comes from a specific product category. You might want to separate labels for that product group. And finally, Aggregator Inc. is an online powerhouse that sells all sorts of financial products, from loans to mortgages and insurances to credit cards. Would you feel comfortable with the fact that the keyword mortgage influences the evaluation of the keyword insurance? I would not, and as such, you would want to create a DDA model for each of your main business units, so that you can use those models to power bid strategies on the relevant generic activity. The example we have put forward is for their home insurance business unit, where we created this model to power a DDA bid strategy on all home, building and landlord insurance keywords. And last but not least, we need a minimum of 20,000 clicks and 800 conversions over a 30-day period to build the data-driven model. So let's start this process of trying to find the right label structure for our DS demo account, Oceanic Airlines. All data in this account is fake. The first thing to examine is the structure of a particular advertiser. You should ask yourself, to what level could you potentially connect your labels? Is there a naming convention in the account structure already? Let's start by looking at the keyword level data. It is there where you can see how well an account is structured and where most traffic comes from. Let's order this by costs and examine how well the naming conventions used in the ad groups and campaign structure are. Again, make sure your labels cover all search activity. Stay on or go to the Keyword tab and download the search activity if you are more comfortable slicing this data elsewhere. Include the keyword tick box and exclude rows with no impressions. You can pivot that to group clicks, conversion and costs on an ad group, campaign and country level. Do you spot any naming conventions in the ad group or campaign structure that make sense? Do the keywords that fall under the hierarchy fulfill a similar role in the customer journey? If the answer to both questions is yes, you could most likely use the current campaign structure to apply your DDA labels based on existing naming conventions in the account. Repeat this for all your labels and get started building your DDA label structure. The structure you are thinking of, does it cover 100% of search activity? Make sure you do not miss any campaigns. In this example, I might be thinking about creating a brand label and would be looking to use filters to check what percentage of costs would be covered by each label you want to create. Here is how you apply a label and future-proof the model when new search activity gets added. Rules ensure that the right DDA labels are automatically created when new paid search activity gets launched. So rather than manually applying the labels, set up daily recurring rules that automatically apply the label. When the rules execute and applies the labels, it will take 12 hours for the labels to appear. Let's apply the brand label for Oceanic Airlines. We start by creating a name for the rule we are going to set up. I would name it after the model we are going to create, in this case DDA1. In the previous exercise, we have found that the best way to apply a label to identify brand activity is through the ad group naming convention brand and misspelling. We click on preview, matching keywords to check if this assumption was correct and if we need to apply additional filters to limit the label from getting applied. Click next. Select Change Label and then Create New Label and try to stick to the same naming convention used in the rule DDA1. Hit Save. Fill in your email address and ask to be notified whenever you think is best. Hit Next. When do you want the check for new search activity to label it up with your new DDA labels? I will keep it in this example to a daily frequency recurring at 6 PM. Hit Save. Keep in mind that with this setup in place, you will minimize the risk of new search activity launching that will not roll up in the DDA model. You are future-proofing the DDA model by not applying the labels manually and assuming your predecessor will know it all. Repeat this step to all labels you want to create. The rules we have just created are not going to execute until 6 PM. When they execute and apply the labels, it will take 12 hours for those labels to become visible. Let's not wait for the labels to be applied. Let's do a first check to see if my labels are covering all search activity. In order to do that, we need to set up filters to mirror the label structure you have created in the previous step. I have two labels set up at a campaign level. The first one to cover my generic activity, which I have applied through a contains generic, and the second one through a contains origin matching condition. My other two labels are applied at the ad group level, so I do set up a similar filter on dest, and last but not least, both conditions on my first label, brand and misspelling. First thing I can see after I hit apply is that there is $3,500 not captured by any of my labels. That is 5%. Let's examine that more closely. What activity have I missed? There seems to be some email and social activity tracked in this DS account. I've missed labeling that up. For now you are fine not to label this up and have it in your uncategorized pool of clicks. The DDA model groups this with all other click activity in your DCM floodlight configuration and applies credit to those clicks so that the credit you see in DS is deduplicated for your other marketing channels. Same goes for the 172 clicks on your remarketing campaign. I can see that most of the clicks I have missed in my label structure sit in the general terms campaigns. When I click on costs, I can see that this is where most of the costs sit as well. Let's switch to the keyword tab to see what sort of keywords sit in those campaigns. A combination of first class, cheap and business class tickets. Where would this sit best? I go back to my rules section and see my 4 rules applied there. I could set up a new label for business class and luxury flights, as I have only applied 4 labels so far. Or I could group it under my generic label. If there is enough conversion volume, you could set up 1 more label. If there is not, you might want to go for the latter option. I will go for the easy option and add it to my generic label. I decide to remove the old generic rule rather than edit the current rule, to create a new one and captures the general terms campaigns as well. I add general to the conditions to match the label to the campaigns. Do one final run through of the conditions for the new rules you've set up. Are they in line with the floodlight tags you want to create a DDA model for? For example, if you are keen to create a DDA model to use for a bid strategy in the UK, are the labels exclusively applied to search activity that runs in the UK market? Are the naming conventions in order? If all of this is okay, the next step is very easy. All we have to do is wait for a day, let the rules create, and apply the labels at 6 PM. Wait 12 hours for those labels to sink in, and you can set up your first DDA model tomorrow.